chat that says link.
Wait, Syrian refugee, will you read a Thomas the Tank Engine one?
How long is it?
Oh, yeah, it's all fucking...
That's fucking interesting. How the fuck does it... It's called Thomas the Tank Engine and Tension Relief. Oh, fuck me.
Okay, this is Minecraft.
It's really good. It's really good, dude. It's actually really well written.
This is so long. Fuck me.
Oh my god.
That's actually that in
Let
front
me
of
be
Bumbo.
clear, this is not just an erotic fanfic starring
Read
Thomas the
my
Tank Engine.
fanfiction.
Which one
It's
is
a
yours?
3,680 word
It's in links, so you
erotic
should be able to see
fanfic.
it.
I know. Who's
Fuck
talking
right
though?
off.
Who's talking?
It's no,
Anal
Be
whisper.
quiet, be quiet, be quiet, be
see
quiet.
it.
Listen.
Ah,
Syrian
this is a
refugee.
YouTube link. Oh shit. Oh,
No, it's in links. It's
Womenparty.org.
Is anyone recording this?
Yes.
I'm not.
Games. Sonic the Hedgehog.
I wish I was.
Rated K
I am.
plus.
I wish I was sober enough to record this.
Hurt, comfort, and humor. Dr. Robert. Okay, kill me.
Think before you say each word.
I would like somebody that's not in the third grade to read, please.
We're here in downtown New York.
Thomas held Rosie close to him in the quiet of the empty steamworks. He had suggested that he and Rosie spend the night there to give her the chance to relax. Rosie had refused at first, but relented when she realized that Thomas only wanted to help her to relax and to help her forget her torment for one evening. Thomas, Rosie whispered to him, I love you so much. You're just so good to me. We don't have to do anything you aren't comfortable with, Thomas said. Quickly, we can just talk if you want, or we can kiss if that's all you want. I just want you to relax tonight. I want to put everything aside for tonight and relax. Oh, Thomas, let's talk first then. All right, Rosie, what do you want to talk about? How much I love you, and how much I want to kiss you. Did I mention that the trains were in love? So at least the preschool fanfiction train fucking will be more than casual sex. I'm sure the creators of Thomas the Tank Engine will appreciate that.
Dude, Syrian refugee, it's really funny, dude. It's a fucking nice meme. The guy is fucking a legend that created it.
So I'm guessing like there are paragraphs and then he's like adding his own fucking things.
Yeah.
Thomas began to kiss Rosie with great care and sensitivity. Rosie blushed as she moved closer to Thomas, revealing in his soft touch upon her. He was so kind and caring, he never being too rough or too gentle. He was exactly perfect for her. She loved how he kissed her and held her close to her. He truly loved her, never wanting to let go, and she never wanted to leave him. Soon Thomas began to kiss her more. Passionately flushing, Rosie kissed him even harder. She was feeling herself needing to kiss Thomas, to hold him even closer and to kiss him with such forceful passion. Very carefully Rosie ran her tongue across Thomas's lips. Thomas opened his mouth and let Rosie's tongue dart inside him. She was blushing profusely, but completely lost in her love for him. For a while, the two were simply kissing each other.
What am I listening to?
Thomas the Tank Engine fanfiction.
I found a Shrek fanfiction as well.
There's already enough of those.
Yeah, there's already too many of them.
fanfiction. The one that's in links.
I'm pretty sure like the second and third movies were already erotic fanfictions.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a story. You want to hear it?
Yeah, go on.
Alright, go on Pornhub and look up cake fart.
Cake fart.
No.
Don't do it. No, that's basically
It's
good.
Do not do it. You
That's
wanna
my
die.
favorite.
Oh, you guys
basically
really
just-
underestimate me.
That's my favorite fanfiction ever.
Man,
No, you need to read the Bionicles one first.
Don't be a pussy, look it up.
Said that
I've
in
been
the link.
completely
You know what?
desensitized by
Yeah.
4chan. Do you guys know what egg juice is?
Chronicles erotic
I got said that
fanfiction.
in the link
Do you guys
and
know
I
what
lost
egg
it.
juice is? Answer the question.
What's one?
Egg juice.
Egg juice. Yeah, I know what egg juice is.
What?
Like juice of an egg.
It's where you firmly grasp a male's testicles, take a razor blade, cut a tiny wee little slit, and collect the juice that pours out.
What the fuck?
That is egg juice.
Alright, but look up cake farts though.
I'm not gonna do that.
Can we just read this fanfiction?
What are we doing with our lives? Why are any of us here? Like,
Do me a favor and read the
There
entire
is
thing
no
in the
God.
real question.
This is what happens
There
when I
is
can't
no
fucking
God.
sleep.
Doo-doo-doo.
Voodoo the voodoo. For a while, the two were simply kissing each other with deep passion. Rosie emitted a faint moan of longing when Thomas broke
Okay.
off. This was amplified when
Somebody
Thomas kissed her
read
cheeks
that
and brow
Obama
very
Sonic
sweetly.
fanfiction.
Shut up! Let me read it.
And delicately, he was making her feel nothing but pure love and admiration of him, which was exactly how he felt about her. Thomas was only interested in making sure his love was content and enjoying the evening. It just says underneath that paragraph, the amount of thought this man has put into Thomas the Tank Engine kissing another train is just absolutely terrifying. That is beautiful. Rosie's eyes fluttered open. Dimly she noticed that Thomas was moving her backwards towards the left. She knew what Thomas was about to do, and she decided she wanted something else from him instead. Thomas! Stop! Please! Thomas stopped, looking at Rosie with love and concern in his eyes. What's wrong, Rosie? Don't you want me to do this? More than anything, my Thomas. It's just, I want to taste you first, Thomas. Let me please you first. Thomas was as red as James, realizing what his love meant to do. Oh, Rosie, I wanted to do this for you. Rosie was now inches from him, her eyes hungry and her face full of intent. Thomas licked his lips nervously as Rosie was driving him wild inside. All his arguments against this had melted away as he gazed at his love. Do you want to help me, Thomas? Rosie breathed. Thomas now trembled as his love looked him directly in the eyes. Yes. Do you want me to be distracted, Thomas? Yes, Thomas whispered. Then move backwards to the left. Thomas, drop your fire. Let me love you. Rosie pushed Thomas backwards towards the lift. Clearly she was intent upon her goals. Thomas blushed as his love kissed him with passion, holding him close and slipping her tongue past his lips again, intertwining them in a passionate dance of love. Drop your fire, Thomas. I want you to enjoy this. Thomas obeyed. Thomas obeyed, kept spellbound by Rosie's eyes. He was slightly shaking as the lift began to raise him skyward. As he went up, he could feel himself becoming exposed to Rosie. His internal workings were revealed to her as he sat upon the lift, perpendicular to the ground. He couldn't help but blushing, feeling his face burn, though it was nothing like the inner fire that had been developing within and was now burning bright. Rosie simply stared at Thomas, revealed to her in all his glory. Thomas was familiar, yet strange. There were many places on him that she knew she would spend time upon. The most important of these were his steam ports, a nozzle-type device pointing down to where the ground would normally be. This, she knew, was the place where excess steam would be drained to help relieve boiler pressure. Every steam engine had such a place. Hers was an open hole on her own underside. In that instant, Rosie knew that she was too delicately. Rosie knew what she was to do. Delicately, she touched Thomas's port with her tongue. Flicking at once, Thomas groaned, trembling. Though he had been trembling from the beginning, Rosie couldn't help but smirk at this. Thomas, you're so beautiful, Rosie whispered to him. Are you scared, my Thomas? You're shaking. I can't help it, Thomas shuddered. You're just so amazing, Rosie. Have you ever done this before? Well, I fucking suck. I suck train dick on the regular, cunt. Never. But I thought I know exactly what you need. Do you want me to do this? Rosie gently stroked Thomas's port with her tongue, making him moan and shake harder. Rosie, don't stop. Rosie gently licked Thomas's paw as if it were an ice cream, making Thomas quake. Rosie was very good despite her inexperience. Her tongue swirled around him, surrounding him and making him moan with pleasure. It was clear that Rosie was giving Thomas immense satisfaction and pleasure as she continued to work upon him. Then Rosie stopped for a moment. Thomas was about to ask her why she had stopped, when suddenly he felt something cool and wet drizzling into his port. He shuddered violently, and he realized Rosie was gently drooling on him, soaking him before she proceeded to lick it all away. Moaning louder than ever, Thomas could not believe how sensitive and powerful Rosie was upon him. It just says underneath that, you know why she's drooling on Thomas? Thomas is non-dick, because she is a train, and she has no arms or hands.
Yes, it's really good. It's really funny. It's a good laugh to read.
Oh, Thomas, Rosie murmured, how turned on are you? How do you feel? Because I'm so wet right now. Oh, Rosie, don't stop, please. You're just too good. What do you think of Thomas when you're turned on? Do you think of me?
Thomas whispered into Rosie's ear, "Choo choo."
Do you think of me sucking you off? Do you imagine me tasting you? Do you think of me covered in you? Rosie's voice was thick with seductive tones. She knew what this would do to Thomas and what this was doing for herself as well. Thomas's mind was flooded with impossible images of Rosie underneath him, her lips sealed around his port and sucking deeply, her eyes big and sparkling with love and lust. Suddenly, Thomas moaned in absolute pleasure Rosie was making his dream come true. Rosie had gently wrapped her lips around Thomas's port, delicately applying pressure to him as she caressed him with her tongue. She could taste Thomas on her tongue, absolutely loving the way he tasted to her. As Thomas shook and writhed, she kept licking him inside of her mouth. Soon she began to taste something different. Something very different. People are waking up. I think I've woken people up.
Yeah, I had to turn.
Why does everybody think I'm Anna Lucifer?
Yo, this fan fiction's fucking long, dog.
Like, they think I'm the Anna Lucifer.
It's good though. It's good though.
Yeah, people think I'm him, but I'm not.
Tom Syrian, keep on reading it, dude. It's really good.
Hey, who are you? I think I know you from somewhere.
Me?
No, the other guy said he thinks he's not. People say he's not somebody, but he really is.
Oh god. Where the fuck am I up to?
Alright, I have an inventory full of farm and
you just finished
it's like 10 hours.
I don't know, you said I wasn't really paying attention shit, so don't know where you're up to. Just you should be fine, just read a bit.
This is worse than 50 Shades of Grey.
It really fucking is.
Read some 50 Shades of Grey fanfic.
It's so good.
Thomas was seeing stars from the pure pleasure Rosie was giving him. Ah, Rosie, I'm going to... Suddenly Thomas felt something rising through him, too fast for him to control. Rosie! Rosie stopped, surprised by Thomas's cry. Then she felt Thomas begin to spray his fluids into her mouth. At once Rosie backed up. Caught off guard, Thomas cried out as he released himself all over Rosie. She was absolutely covered in his juices, with some still in her mouth. Thomas was helpless to do anything more than shake feverishly, wailing as he released himself. Dripping with Thomas's juices, Rosie felt very different. This was a completely new feeling. It made Rosie feel a burning desire deep within her. Never would she have imagined that she would be here, covered in her love's fluids and wanting more. She loved this feeling in a deep way. She loved Thomas more deeply than she could possibly describe, and she was sure he loved her just as much. He could never love her more than she loved him. At that point, Rosie knew she had to deal with the fluids in her mouth. Tentatively, she swallowed them at once. A very strange feeling came over her. She began to feel weak, wheeled as she realized she had swallowed Thomas's juices. Even more intense was the feeling that she liked it. She liked having him in her mouth and wanted to have him again.
Talking about niggas, you fucking nigga.
Shut up.
And you're fucking 12, cunt. Grow some fucking pubic hair, you little cunt. Mate, if you were my son, I'd beat you fucking 5 days to Sunday.
Young child, you dare interrupt the Thomas the Tank Engine fanfiction? Be gone.
God, your parents can just fucking beat the living shit out of you.
So goddamn big, I'll fucking come inside you. You little bitch.
Can you even get an erection? You kind of need one.
I don't think he's old enough to get an erection.
Mate, I will fucking pound your little asshole so hard that you'll get a prolapse anus for the next 40 years.
Cake fart. Hashtag cake fart.
I'm gonna fucking stick your dick inside your asshole and then lick it. And I'm gonna make you lick it. And
That's
then put
fine,
your
mate.
dick
A micro penis can't hurt that bad.
Listen up here, you fucking bloody ass.
No, you fucking listen up here, cunt. You fucking don't fucking speak to me in that tone, you little cunt.
You probably 17 every day!
You want me to fucking come over there and fucking rip your cock right out of its fucking shackle, cunt?
Calm down, both of you. I'll fuck you both.
No, that guy, I'll let him fuck me. I would let him fuck me.
Come to America! Come to America!
Why the fuck would I want to come to your broken country, cunt?
Look, come to America! We didn't even have an Uzi! Shut up!
Mate, come to Zealand, cunt! Come to New Zealand, cunt! Hey, one else, cunt! Fucking one else, cunt! Hey!
Does your child
Don't mess with the shoot shagger, dude. Don't mess with the shoot shagger.
Cunt!
Don't worry. You don't
Fucking
even need to go.
fucking
You don't
figure out a
even
fucking
need to
mongrel
go
mob,
beat
cunt.
him up. The police will do that for him. The police will do that for you. They'll beat him up.
Sig hell, are a mongrel mob, cunt! Sig hell, fucking Tauranga!
Come on, bitch. Come on.
Fucking mongrel, cunt! You wanna
Listen
fuck
up
with
here,
me?
you
You
little
wanna fuck with
fat.
a real G, cunt?
Since you do this, I'll take it easy on you.
Fucking A,
You
cunt!
fat ass
Fucking
cunt.
A,
You call me, your mom called me ugly
Fucking
because
think
you're
hard,
still
cunt!
old.
Think hard, cunt!
Listen up, Brody. You better be shutting up or we'll come right to your house and fuck you in the ass.
Oh, please!
How many My Little Pony fanfics?
I never was, nigga.
Oh my god.
Please don't read any of those.
I know this. Speak you don't you know shit.
Oh,
No,
this little
shut up.
cunt's pulled me right off the fucking fanfiction train, mate.
Hey, someone read that Sonic and Obama fan.
No, we have to finish Thomas the Tank Engine.
Trump stuck it to Obama.
We have to finish the Thomas the
Rosie
Tank
said
Engine.
tentatively, I want more, Thomas. I want to taste you again. I need more. Thomas trembled as he felt Rosie's warm breath upon his port. Rosie, you're... Oh, Rosie. Oh, ah. Rosie had applied her lips to Thomas once again, this time beginning to suck harder and deeper than she had before. She caressed him with her tongue, again trying to coax him into giving her more of his juices. She needed to feel them slide down her throat, needed to taste them and savor them again as Rosie raked Thomas's port with her teeth. She felt him writhing from her touch. Ah, Rosie, you... Oh, more, please, you're so good. Oh! Rosie hummed softly as she continued to suck upon Thomas. Thomas wailed as he shook his modesty with the release of his concerns. Rosie was making him feel so incredible. The image of Rosie in his mind, coupled with the intense sensations she was making him feel while threatening to overpower him. Rosie, I'm going to... You... I know, Rosie murmured to him as she licked him. I want to taste you, Thomas. I want you. Give me everything you have, my love. Then Rosie moved as close to him as she could, taking as much of him as she could, nearly gagging. Rosie swirled her tongue all around his port, tasting him and sucking him deeply. With one cry of pleasure, Thomas released himself into Rosie's mouth. Rosie began to swallow as much of Thomas's fluids as she could, swallowing in perfect rhythm to his release. The taste was unlike anything Rosie had ever experienced before. It was unique and special, just like her Thomas. She loved it. Determinedly, Rosie kept swallowing, ignoring the dizziness that came with the knowledge that Thomas's fluids were pouring down her throat. Moving through her, Rosie gulped down every drop that Thomas gave her, and then proceeded to use her tongue to clean up any remaining traces left over. Had she been aware of her love's reactions, Rosie would have noticed Thomas's bucking and writhing upon the lift as Rosie cleaned him with her very sensitive tongue. Finally, Rosie backed away, letting Thomas come down off his high. Thomas was still trembling even after he hit the ground, breathing heavily and moaning softly. He looked so cute in Rosie's mind. Then she remembered how she had swallowed every drop of his juices and reconsidered. Thomas was more than cute. He was her love, and he had turned on her. Thomas, on the other hand, simply thought Rosie was hot. There was nothing else for it. She was absolutely incredible, and their love for each other was absolute. Rosie was perfect. She was also gazing at him with such burning lust and longing in her eyes that it made Thomas weak-willed.
Burning Legion. I'll make you have the best old game.
Burning Legion.
In the world.
Well done.
For the burning.
Oh my
Kids,
god,
you
this
really
thing's so
suck you off,
fucking
okay?
warm.
It's a really good
If I could punch a sentence and...
Guys, do you know who I hate?
How long is this shit
Oh my
going
god,
for?
this one...
Millionaires and billionaires. Millionaires and billionaires.
Thomas Rosie breathed, moving even closer to
Hey,
her as
kid,
she spoke.
Shut up before I suck you off.
Do you know how you tasted it?
I'm
No.
gonna be
Would you like to?
really loud.
Thomas kissed Rosie deeply and passionately, his tongue moving inside her mouth to meet hers. Thomas caught the taste of. He recognized his own fluids upon Rosie's mouth as he kissed her, tasted himself inside of her, and knew that Rosie had truly swallowed every drop he had given to her, and she had loved it. The thought nearly made Thomas wish he were back on the lift, letting Rosie have even more of the juices he knew would release upon her slightest touch. So turned on was he. Rosie was past pink, having turned a dark shade of crimson. She was terribly aroused, and now in need of release. She needed Thomas's touch upon her to truly make her evening complete. She wanted Thomas to make her come, to release everything else from her life except that one powerful moment.
Okay, I'm gonna go play Witcher 3, so...
Okay, bye.
You don't need to announce it, everyone. Just out of grill.
Jesus
Hey,
Christ,
guys,
there's
I'm
fucking
leaving
so
right
many fucking people. Holy
Grill?
fuck.
Did I just hear grill?
As Thomas carefully moved them backwards, never breaking their kiss, Rosie knew she would get her wish. Drop your fire. Hold on tight.
How many paragraphs?
Fucking good shit.
There's about I think 25.
Oh my god.
Jesus Christ.
This is some good.
Well, they're not they're just separate.
Free powder stuff like that. Why are we stopping the fanfic reading?
They're
Oh,
not.
Mary Flavor Town.
I'm trying to like not speak so loud.
Town, boom. Do-do-do. Take me to Flavor
Can I do
Town.
some Peppa the Pig fanfic?
No.
Not yet, Thomas. Kiss me.
This is Tank
That fit in
This
so
is
well.
Thomas the Tank
Not
Engine.
timing out.
It's Thomas the Tank Engine.
Thomas and Rosie simply kissed each other deeply, intense in their passions, for one another and not willing to let the other go. Their tongues swirled inside each other's mouths as they kissed each other, passionately giving themselves to each other. Thomas kept kissing Rosie until he was sure they were ready to stop. The two broke away and gazed into each other's eyes with pure love and trust. Rosie was blushing deeply, looking at Thomas with a burning desire. She needed him now. Thomas, I know, my love. Just hold tight. Rosie felt herself rising up on the lift, felt herself becoming more exposed to Thomas, and somehow felt his eyes looking all over her. Rosie blushed deeper. If it were even possible, she somehow liked the fact that Thomas was seeing her revealed to him like this. Trembling from anticipation, Rosie felt herself growing wetter and wetter. She knew what Thomas was to do with her, and she wanted nothing more than for him to do it. All aboard!
All aboard?
It actually says that. It fucking says that.
No, it doesn't say that in the proper paragraph. It's the transcript sort of thing.
Thomas gently licked Rosie's underside, moving slowly down and kissing her as he went. Rosie moaned, trembling as Thomas moved carefully along her underside, giving special care and attention to her in as many places as he could. There was no doubt that Thomas was making Rosie feel so very good inside. That's it, my love. Just relax. Let yourself go. Moan for me, Rosie. Come to me. Thomas, you're so good, Rosie whimpered as Thomas missed her port, moving near it, but never touching it directly. Eat me, Thomas, please. I'm so wet, Thomas. Trust me, Rosie, I know what I am doing, Thomas murmured. Then without warning, he lifted a soft place on Rosie that he knew would make her even more aroused. Rosie yelped, but again to moan as Thomas licked and kissed it feverishly. He was taking great care to make sure Rosie was not hurt, only wanting her to feel pleasure before satisfaction.
Jesus.
Thomas drifted his tongue across Rosie's underside, kissing her and making her shake. Rosie whimpered as Thomas deliberately circled around her port but did not reach it. He was not ready for Rosie to release herself yet. He wanted her to enjoy this, wanted her to thoroughly enjoy her release when it came. In the meantime, he continued to kiss Rosie's underside, making her wail as he came upon certain spots underneath her. Rosie was moaning with pure pleasure and a firm desire for release. Thomas was being so thorough, so detailed in his ministrations upon her. She was trembling as she tried to keep herself controlled. Whimpering, she shook as Thomas's tongue began to move even closer to that sweetest of spots within her. Thomas, you're going to make me. Oh, Rosie, are you going to orgasm already? It's okay, Rosie. You can do it if you want to, Thomas murmured to her, whimpered as she struggled to maintain control of herself. Thomas's voice was so seductive, driving her wild. You can come on me, Rosie. Should I turn you on even more?
Oh, he's still going.
It's amazing!
Yeah, I know, it's so good, isn't it? Like, I can't believe I found it.
Really? Actually, so good.
Oh, Rosie!
Everyone, just please.
Thomas, Rosie gasped. Please, I really need to. Oh! Do it, Rosie. Let yourself know. Let me get covered in you. Let me taste you. Soak me with your juices, Rosie. I want to make you orgasm so hard you'll scream. Thomas, please, eat me. It's too much, Thomas. Please. Thomas had gently begun to lick Rosie's opening, tasting the liquid leaking from her pores. Rosie wailed as Thomas carefully moved his tongue inside of her.
There's some vibrate.
Fucking hell. Thomas carefully moved his tongue inside of her, savoring her. He dipped his tongue inside her again and again, lapping up her fluids with great care and sensitivity. Rosie, you taste so good. Won't you come to me, Rosie? Let me taste you some more, Thomas murmured, licking her port and beginning to eat her out. I want you to cover me. Soak me, my love. I want you dripping off of me.
Yeah, that one person joined and then immediately left.
That's the kind of reaction we're trying to garner from this.
If we're gonna read another one,
okay, Syrian refugee.
The good ones.
Yes.
Syrian. I thought you were just a recording that somebody did because like you're actually pretty good at like doing what you're doing right now.
Can you do some Thomas the Tank Engine?
I got like maybe 3 more paragraphs of this.
I was expecting somebody to like play like a vaporwave version of like Thomas the Tank. You know?
The fuck is vaporwave? I've been hearing this goddamn word everywhere.
Yeah, but just
you get Diana Ross's "It's Your Move" slowed down by 70%. That's it.
Right, and carrying
It's
on.
literally what like the Macintosh Plus thing is.
God damn, man. Vaporwave, nigga. God damn.
God damn it, man.
Suddenly, Rosie began to lose control. The images of Thomas thoroughly covered in her, combined with her intense feelings of inner heat and passion, overpowered her at last. Thomas, I'm As Thomas had promised, Rosie screamed as she released herself. Thomas began to suck directly upon her opening, drinking her fluids deeply and reaching deep into her core to lap up her juices. He could taste her upon his tongue as he lapped up all of her fluids, revealing in the way Rosie was bucking and writhing, struggling to release more of the tension that he had built up inside of her. Rosie was in a state of ecstatic pleasure. She felt herself releasing her orgasm, felt Thomas drinking it up, and screamed as she came even harder. Thomas was just too much. He had built Rosie up with his teasing on purpose, purely so that her climax would be big and powerful. At that moment, though, Rosie could not care. All she knew was that her orgasm was tearing through her with extreme force and making her oblivious to all else. And that's the sound it made. However, Thomas was not finished yet. He groaned into Rosie as he continued to lick her port, making Rosie scream as she came again. Rosie buckled and shook, trying to desperately let herself go completely. She just felt too good inside. Thomas kept eating Rosie out, smirking as he felt Rosie orgasm again and again. Come on, Rosie. You can come to me. Let it out. Soak me. Thomas, I'm going to... Oh, Seems like this author puts on sunglasses, has a one-track mind. Yow! Dun, dun, dun.
I can never look at Thomas the Tank Engine in the same again.
No, fucking neither, dude. Fucking neither. It is so like...
I had to.
You're listening to the best fucking fanfiction out there.
Oh, I might as well just fucking finish this cunt. At last, Thomas backed off. Rosie was carefully lowered back into the ground, shaking as she went. She was trembling, feeling weak-willed from her multiple orgasms. Breathing heavily, she saw Thomas smiling gently at her. All he had upon his face was pure love for her. He had pleasured her, and he had allowed her to pleasure him, and had made her feel so very good inside. Everything he had done for her. Rosie began to tear up to Thomas's surprise. Thomas... "Thank you," she whispered softly, kissing him sweetly. "Thank you for doing this for me. I needed this. I needed you. I love you, Rosie. I'll always be here for you. You know that." Smiling through her tears, Rosie kissed Thomas gently on his mouth, slipping her tongue inside and joining them immeasurably. Thomas felt her tears on his face as she kissed him, blushing as she kept giving herself to him completely. Rosie needed to feel her love holding her, needed to keep him as close to her as possible to rid herself of the memories that consumed her. It didn't work, Thomas. "I still remember them," she whispered to her love, upset. "You'll always remember them, my love. Never forget them. Just remember the good times instead of the bad. Oh, Thomas, the memories, my brothers, gone. The memories hurt so much." Rosie shivered slightly as she remembered tears silently falling down her face. "I miss them all so much." "They'd be proud of you," Thomas said quietly. "They'd be proud to know how well you've done. They'd be proud to know you're so strong and brave, and that you've still been going strong for them. They'd love you as much as I do." Rosie shook as she wept, words failing her as she cried into Thomas's embrace. She knew that she was strong and brave, but she still loved that Thomas was always there for her to hold on to her and support her. As she cried, Thomas whispered words of comfort to her, never letting her go, and always being there for her. Holding her, he kissed her brow and kept her close to him until she had fallen asleep. And that's the fucking end, cunt!
Oh, right.
Oh, thank God.
Oh no, this is a fucking long one.
Yes. Oh my God.
Oh, it's
Really
carry on.
got
I'm fucking sweating.
Epic fanfiction.
I've never been moister, to be perfectly honest.
Oh my God.
Now, were the sound sounds okay? Like, I felt like they were too loud.
Syrian, we need to get you your own jail in this Discord.
Be like a train in here.
We need to start a petition to get Syrian a fanfic channel on this
Train
Discord.
fiction.
Yes. Bumbo's at the...
Didn't Top Cat start this whole...
Yeah, I sort of started it, yeah.
We started with Top Cat.
I finished it.
Fuck you.
Yes, you did, mate. I really wanted to hear you read the Thomas one. It's
You
just,
know, I've just spent like an hour listening to a British man read Thomas the Train